Welcome to Podcast This Escape, the podcast where we talk about the escape room we escaped from in the previous episode of this podcast. Hey, Dani, you did it. You did an escape room all by yourself.
And so did you. You did
I
it
guessed
as well.
your character
right at the end.
Of Goosebumps' parent. Ridiculous.
The Goosebumps parents have a little bit of that eldritch horrorness to them, where for some reason they have a brain fog where they cannot see or accept the supernatural things going on around them.
Yeah.
There are a couple that are exceptions to this that really get into it, but for the most part, this is how it works.
The only problem was you weren't an archaeologist, and so there was no way of knowing.
We didn't go into that.
That's very.
You
I should have
never asked.
I should have played some 20 questions to guess your character. But look, that was really fun.
Yeah, very solid.
It
I
was
had
very
fun.
solid. It's a solid room. I will say, so I did the playtest, and for people who have the access to our Patreon, you may have heard the playtest. And during that, because I was running it the first time, and I had 3 other people on who were all kind of like escape rooms and are interested in them and want to sort of give to the process. I talked a little bit in that about like changes I could make or would make or things that and I started to get a little bit like, oh, maybe I could do this, or I could change this, or I could put this here to make it sort of more fit my style of how I wanted it to run. And then I decided as soon as I finished that playtest, I went, oh, I shouldn't change anything. That would be silly, right?
Yeah. Like
because it's
rude. You can make
right?
your own
I could make my own
creepy
that way.
creepy skin room.
But this was more changing like, the flow of certain puzzles or like how this could work or this could work. And I didn't want to do any of those changes. So there are some things in that came about of like, oh, if I was writing this, I would change it, but I didn't write it. There is, however, one thing I changed
Oh, okay.
in this room purely because of my own sort of playtest mind. There was a puzzle that could have very easily been broken.
Oh,
and in fact,
all right.
you would have broken it based on how you played.
Interesting.
So I did change that.
Oh, what was that?
So the one thing I changed in this room is the canisters puzzle.
Cool.
Because originally, the canisters were not labeled with color. They were labeled with the numbers 1, 8...
of the elements.
et cetera, et cetera. So the numbers that those elements are on the periodic table.
Right.
And then the transparency just sort of highlighted those
the transparency
numbers.
was still
So I
there.
believe the original intention was the transparency helps you see that those numbers are associated with elements. But because you already know what a periodic table is,
I was
you
very much already
immediately-
on the lookout for it.
you immediately saw shower, great, I'm going to get those letters. I'm going to then just see, and you would have immediately seen that each of those letters had a number that matched the canisters.
Yeah, and
You
at
would have
least for a
solved it-
couple of them, I know their atomic
Exactly.
numbers.
You would have solved that straight away. And then when you found the transparency, you would have been like, oh, I've already solved this.
Quite possibly.
And you wouldn't have even needed to ever free your friends. And you could have left without them. And so just because of that, just because it was possible to break it, if you thought, I wonder if those are, like if you noticed that shower was going to be periodic table elements, which I expected you to, and you did, you could completely skip any of the freeing of your friends or the bed, and you may have gotten
that
out
would
of the
have been
entire
an
room.
interesting dilemma.
And you would have been like, you could leave now or free your friends. It would have been very different. So that was the only thing I changed. was I
Right.
added the colors to the canisters just so that it was completely required to get the transparency.
The most interesting part about that, I feel, is that if you were doing it as a physical escape room, that is like the original way is 100% how we would have seen it. Like, because any level of that knowledge would not have been expected
True.
at all. And for some reason, seeing it in a physical room, I feel like you would be less likely to necessarily do that.
The only alternative being that if you did grab, because you do get the periodic table. So then if you'd looked through that and been like, oh, I see an S, oh, I see an H, oh, I see a W, like if you just stared and looked at that, especially in a physical escape room where you might have 4 people and one person's just like, I'm just going to look at this periodic table.
Possibly.
They might notice. And so I just wanted to make, that was the only thing that I actually changed and kept in as a change. But I can talk about other stuff. Like I have notes for things that were different. There is one other thing I changed.
Ooh.
Purely out of habit from the reading it, and it didn't matter for yours, but it would have mattered for the playtest. Which was originally when the door scans you, it just says subject toxic. It does not say subject clean. And then I realized, because then the people in the playtest didn't shower, but they did, because I did mention the cabinet to them and they knew it existed. They put on the suit, expecting like, well, now that I'm covered in a clean suit, I am no
can't
longer
tell.
toxic, because how could it scan me? And I thought that's sort of fair. I want people to be looking for both, so I added both clean. Usually it's like the way it's written is
Normally it would
you
be, it
turn
says
up-
subject toxic, you have a shower, you go back
then
and it says subject clean,
unprotected.
but...
It just says subject unprotected.
Okay.
But then I went, oh, well, now they're solving the problem that hasn't yet to be delivered to them. And so now it's going to say the same thing. And then they maybe think it's not relevant. So I just added both elements.
I can understand why, through a variety of play tests, that could come up several times. I would have been fine with that.
Yeah,
because personally, one, I find it a funny troll to change the issue multiple times on me. But for another, as soon as I saw toxic, I thought shower's going to gas me clean.
I like that.
And
I
I
like
was cool
that
with that.
feeling. Like, I think it, like, if you got it in that order, it feels better. You were clean, then you go there and say, now you're unprotected. You're like, damn it. But if you find the protection first, it's like subject clean, so you go up with protection, and then it says subject toxic again.
This is also true that you screwed me on that, so who knows what my thought process would have been if I had known there was a cabinet.
But the only thing there is then you're like, oh, maybe this suit isn't needed, and then it feels a little bit like, okay, now I'll put the suit back on. So I just wanted to make it clear from the start there were two issues.
Yeah,
it's maybe that was a little bit more of an overreach that I could have left
I think that
untouched.
for me at least, you could have left that one. I have no idea if like that would have been a universal thing. It may well, based on the playtest, have been a very good idea to do.
There was actually one other thing I said that wasn't in the write-up that I wouldn't consider a change, which is the computer hint thing.
Oh yes,
which is just me
I
giving you a hint.
understood that. Yeah, and that was very fair because that was to me. I don't know. It's one of these things. Computer passwords are such a thing where. Yeah, it's hard to know based on the room and very much on your visualization of the room, how much you can just draw on something that is sitting near the computer to pull on that. Like, I understand very much in our audio escape rooms. I feel like that is a very reasonable thing to do.
Yeah, true. I think there's a classic thing in media of like, oh, we want to try and guess their password. Put the thing they like. Put the date of their birthday, put the date of their wife's birthday or something.
Exactly.
And it's, whereas I think in real life, I don't know how many people actually do that.
No, I agree.
And so
such a TV thing.
It's such a TV thing, which is
what's
why it
your
works.
password, everyone?
Everybody, just send in a comment on this and email us your passwords.
Are your passwords actually things that are important to you?
Please don't email our passwords. But yeah, so there may be like when I was playing through it, like,
You're not
is there anything
guess our
I would,
passwords ever.
if there's anything I would change, like that was one of my list of like, should there be more of like a smoking gun, sort of like, without trialing and testing, it's like, this is it. It's the password.
Yeah, this is less of a, oh no, we need to work this out from a puzzle perspective, but this is just a getting on the same page as the designer sort of thing, like trying to play through it. Like, I would say, computer needs a password, great. I'm going to leave so that I can take some time to find out and help me gauge more of the room and help me gauge, is this going to be the sort of room where it is looking for inspiration from the things around me, or am I going to find something that's got a picture of a computer on it?
Yeah, exactly.
Like, where am I going to go with this? Very solid in terms of some of the things. It was easy to see where they were going to connect, like saying hooks, being a fine hook and having little holes to work with, nice and easy to make that connection.
When you saw, as soon as you saw the chess moves, you're like, I wonder if there's going to be like a Paris gambit. Or
I did. That was fortunate, I feel.
Which worked out well. Usually the connector is, like you said it before the description, but the description fills in like...
It included a French, I noticed that.
So you're like, oh, there's places, and then you find the places.
Well, that was that was exactly what happened.
Oh, okay, lovely.
Like, you mentioned places, and I got it from that, so that was exactly what it should have been. But then we have other ones, like the entire time, the clocks, I had no idea clearly what was happening there.
Now, interestingly, the clocks thing, they mentioned in their email when they first sent this in, is stolen from you.
What?
A clock that is randomly changing times when the people are looking at it.
Yes, I have done that.
Was you did that in the Witch's Tower or something?
Yes, you're right, I did.
And that's where they stole the idea for that puzzle.
Horrifically difficult Roman numerals pattern.
Yes, I think it was. This is a little bit nicer.
Yeah. But I still very much assumed it was a pattern that I had to figure out what was coming next.
Yes. One thing I think that helped make that, like, because that isn't the solution, the thing that makes that nicer is, in this, I actually remembered that it goes clockwise, anti-clockwise, clockwise, anti-clockwise. In the playtest, I'd forgotten that. And then they noticed that every step forward clockwise, because they were assuming clockwise every time, was like a 70-minute step, or there was like, or the minute hand went up by 70. So there was like, it was a similar amount, or maybe it was like, it was 210 minutes, then 140 minutes, then 70 minutes, or something like that. And they went, oh, so I'm going to need to find the next, or something like that. But then I have to go 0 minutes. So maybe that's great. Maybe that was intentional from Freya. Like, if you do find that pattern, it goes to 0. That means you're at the final step.
That would be amazing if that were true.
Which is fun. But the direction going both ways, I think, makes it harder to predict what it could be next in terms of like any adding. Like, are we subtracting then adding that? And because of that, it's good because you want people not to be trying to think of what it comes next.
Yeah. And weirdly, the thing that gave that to me in the end was you saying that the wardrobe was currently at 12.
Yes, that's another thing that I hinted. I don't think that was in the thing. That was just me
responding
that was me
to
going,
me saying, I thought
Dani's starting to think about pattern. What's a thing I could say that makes her not think about the pattern? So I went, it starts at 12.
Very clear.
Which is both a reasonable thing that it would be, and also I think a good hint.
Yeah, presumably it has to be set at something.
Exactly. So I tried to give it on the fly a setting that would give you a thought.
Makes sense.
And I think it worked out quite well.
I like a good element thing as a puzzle, not just for a puzzle perspective, because it is one of those things that when you have a tiny bit of knowledge of a topic already, it just makes you feel kind of good. Like there was a time we were in Canada and we did a room that at some point you needed to match up some moons to the planets that they belong to. And we did eventually find a big chart that told us all of this information.
But we didn't need it.
We needed to know that was what we were doing for the puzzle. We needed it for a couple of them, but we could go through it super quickly because there were so many that we could assume or already knew.
You hear a Shakespearean moon.
Exactly.
And you know it's Uranus?
Yes. Exactly.
You see Phobos, you see Deimos, you know it's Mars.
Yeah, so little fun ones where you just got just enough outside knowledge to not break it, but make it go better and make you feel smart. Because the whole point of these is to feel smart. How did it feel for you? Well, first of all, you don't run these as often as I do. How did you feel?
That was great. Just relaxing being the person running it.
And how different is that compared to...
Even when I got something completely wrong and didn't mention the cabinet, I still felt good about myself.
Interesting. And how does it compare to, like, you had to do this with the playtest, but not quite the same thing. Like when it is, first of all, just one player, and second of all, just me.
Just you is very easy.
Sweet.
We're on a very similar wavelength. I know how you think. I know what you're doing. And because of that, I also knew there were certain things that were going to take you a little bit longer, like ordering these purely chronologically, the 4 passport photos.
How did you know I wouldn't do that?
Because I wouldn't do that as a first thought. I thought that was going to be something that was too hard. In the playtest, they saw it and went, well, let's order them chronologically.
Right.
Whereas I think you and me both wanted a little bit more of like a smoking gun. Like chronologically is like, well, you could order them chronologically, but you could also order them alphabetically. And it's just the fact that they have a chronological order makes you go, yeah, I'll give it a crack.
And the
but
note
it feels
at
like
the
it's
start
step 1
about
of 4.
David certainly did prime us to think about chronology. In a way, like not
That's
specifically
true.
about this, but that was sort of why I considered it.
Okay, I want to talk about some of the things I've noticed in this reading.
Oh yeah,
that feel like they were puzzles, or there's something else to them that I never understand.
What?
Because this reminds me of it. So, the number of friends in this room, is X. It is not 4. It is X.
Oh.
Because it is not set up as you and your friends. It is just you as players, and then you pick one player to have the thing in their hand. You put as many suits, you just put as many clean suits in as there are people.
I remember when we asked about whether this was a good room to do, I said, yeah, as long as it's doable for one player. And you hesitated and went that you weren't sure, but you think it could work.
I decided to just give you friends so that you could do the puzzle.
Fair.
I picked 4 as the arbitrary number. It's any number from 1 to 6.
Okay.
Now,
so there were more locations? And,
no. Yes. So there were 2 more passport locations.
Yeah.
Sicily, 21st July, 1988. Which is the exact date that is on the picture, and it's in Sicily. And I don't understand why that is true. Especially because he's also the first skin, apparently. He started it. So this is like a series of trips. But then there's a date after that. There's Delhi, 7th of September, 1988. So he was still traveling. It's just the 5th of these travels, he went, I'm going to skin someone. It was very like...
There's some Dark Souls-esque lore to this where we've got to take these fragments and create the story.
Also noting that...
I wonder. Freya, you'll have to weigh in on this.
Yeah, I just found like it almost feels like there's like a little ghost puzzle there or something. Or there's some connection that's interesting lore. Like you should now know from a Dark Souls-y style thing. Like, oh, well, David was traveling the world and he met this person in Sicily, decided to kill him and skin him. And then he went to Delhi.
Yeah, they were going on this holiday together. And then they met the mafia. And that's when it all went wrong.
Yeah, it's all very interesting. But yeah, the fact that that's the same date as the photo isn't relevant, but it's interesting. Also, I don't know why. I think I've only got to it must be arbitrary, but can you? I asked the playtesters this as well, and they had no idea.
Yeah.
Do you think there's any relevance to the fact that the security icon or app on the computer is called GK Security?
Oh.
I don't know anything of why. That seems really specific.
But
I can't think of what GK stands
me
for.
to wonder about
Gun
it.
killing.
Yeah, that
I just
makes
don't know.
sense.
Just GK Security.
No, I hadn't thought about it, and it worries me trying to do this sort of thing because, like, I'm it just reminds me of the other times, like in the previous guest room where we're told, "Hey, I'm Easter egging you."
Oh no!
And
I hope there's no Easter eggs for us. This room, by the way, was sent to us in 2019. I didn't mention that originally. This is ages ago that we left completely untouched. So, who knows what we were talking? Maybe back in 2019 we were really big on GK.
No, look, it is arrogant to assume that it's something to do with us. It's just reminding me of those cases where it has been so, and I haven't gotten a single one.
Dani,
I am bad at them,
also,
let alone trying to guess a possible Easter egg meaning of something that has nothing to do with us.
It's also not that arrogant. They are explicitly a fan of our show, sending us a room that they made based on our rooms. So it's not that out of line. It's not that egomaniacal.
See, I grant you, I was trying to do this for the for David's code 88001DG1.
So,
you know something about this one?
No, I wanted to talk about the code stuff as well.
Oh, okay.
Because this to me feels the most like a ghost puzzle, because there is so much information here that is like multiple ways to get information that you do not need. Because
the examples of codes on the coat hangers?
Well, first of all, yes. So you have coat hangers with codes that feel like they could be examples of something.
Yep.
You have David, 88, and the photo of David was 1988. 001, you know he was the first.
Yep.
DG, maybe his name is David Guerrero.
Could be.
So there's a G there, and then 1, right? So like the code clearly matches to who he is and stuff about him and the date and the number of skinnings. Then also, in the folder about him, you get told like his height and his hair. He has a distinctive birthmark.
I was noticing that, and
but then
trying to see
you
if there
don't
was a
need any
connection
of
to
that
the code.
because you don't need the birthmark or the thing. You just have a code. You match to a code, and it feels like maybe there was more puzzle there at one point.
It could have been, and I think that if you wanted to extend this room for whatever reason, it's a good spot to put a puzzle.
Yeah, because you can make some really.
It's a good idea.
The fact that like there's a birthmark on the skin and a birthmark on David, but also the code matches. So I don't need the birthmark to identify him. But maybe if you found the birthmark, you could see in the file that the birthmark belonged to David. You know that he's David Gray, so you know he must be DG because one of the other body. Like what I would do is I would be like, put the birthmark on a different skin. This is if you were adding puzzle. And by looking at the different skin, which you know have a code, the birthmark goes to a particular picture. And then you're like, okay, well, I now know that the code da-da-da-da-da-da-da goes to this person. Also, those 2 letters are his initials, and these are his whatever. So now I use what I know about David to find his code and find his body.
Yeah, see, I think, like, if I were thinking of this, I would have used this David as an example, but we also needed to find someone else.
Yes, something like that. Way. So there's, like, some stuff there that
So there's ways that you could extend this story, build more lore to make it go crazier if you need to.
You didn't need to. It was a 1-hour room. It was perfectly fine. But it was just interesting because there's so much detail there that it made it seem like at some point there was more or there could have been more.
And it's good because...
Or maybe it's just world building and logic. It's just, this is how you should classify David's skin.
Didn't Freya mention to us that she was considering writing a sequel?
True.
Like, there is clearly good sequel potential to this. Like, you can build off this, so I think it's a really good idea.
Yeah, it's good fun.
It's left in a nice place.
Did you have a moment that you felt especially cool and smart and great?
I like my note keeping. I know that you sneer at it and scoff, apart from me writing the letters of the colours.
Love drawing the clocks. You have to draw the clocks.
Yeah, I think that was a good idea. But like, just look where I drew the 9 dials compared to on my page where I drew the bookcase.
Yeah, it's perfect.
It's right on top of each other, just because that was how I chose to lay it out. I got arrows connecting things. It looks good, and I'm ticking things off as I go, which meant that I got to those dial-y things. I went 9. I don't remember seeing 9 of anything because the numbers were separated out. I was not told there are 9 books.
True.
So that was good to not have that immediately in my head, so I had to find it myself. But yeah, just being able to keep things organized and go, what haven't I used? I have not used this shelf yet. And work with that.
Now, the shelf is a thing. I like that you drew it out because that was the thing that I was considering. Maybe it would be fun, rather than describe the shelf, to draw you the shelf and just give it
okay.
this is what it looks like. And then you could see that it was like 9 books and that they could be middle, bottom, top without me using that language, and make it a little bit harder, but also maybe just more visual.
Yeah. The description where you mentioned it's almost like he has some rules about how he stacks them, not putting things on top of each other and that sort of thing, did make me go, I'm going to find more books and have to put them in
and then
this
do like a
bookshelf.
logic puzzle and follow the rules. Yeah.
Oh, man, there are so many ways that you could overcomplicate these puzzles if you wanted to. Oh, boy.
Well, look, I think it's a fun room. I mean, by as fun as a room full of skinned corpses can be.
Exactly.
But no,
to be fair, the first room had no skinned corpses.
That's true.
It was fine.
Well, except for one of your friends, who was actually the bald guy who drugged you, who was wearing one of your friend's skin,
this is
lying
why
in the bed.
I asked.
Yeah. Trying to get you. Now you've let him out, and he's going to grab you. He's like a reverse vampire. He can't leave his house unless someone tells him to. And so you let him out, and now he's free to skin again.
Perfect.
Good work. But yeah, I think it's really lovely. There's not much else I added. I'm looking back through here where I made notes of changes I could have made, like if I was writing it.
But that's not why we do this.
That's not why we do it. And so I
rooms.
didn't really want to do that. And they were in no way necessary, because it worked out really well.
Yeah.
You got all of the puzzles.
I had fun.
You did all the things. You put in all the codes and unlocked all the people.
That's exactly what we want. How much do you think that this translates to physical escape room? Because it feels pretty solidly like it does.
I think it does. I think it's very solidly physical escape room. And especially you consider this was written for us in 2019. By that point, we were 2 years into the show. We hadn't really delved too far out from things that could be physical escape rooms.
Maybe. It's hard to remember. It's a blur back then.
Yeah, that's true. I suppose we would have been doing Culledons by that point?
We would have done Culledons. Like, we
Maybe
were going into
starting.
some of the weird stuff like the Oscars room and things like that. That was all 2019.
Oh, that's true. That's true.
Getting
a little bit weirder.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that's makes a lot of sense for that sort of time for us as well. I think you could easily do this as a physical room.
Yeah, the only thing that doesn't feel like it would work necessarily would be the toxic camera, but that would easily be a thing that
That'd be Game Master controlled, wouldn't it?
It could be. I'm sure there's some fancy electronics that you can do that once the shower has been activated, that one changes.
Yeah, true. But I think you'd just be Game Master would see if you've showered yourself.
Very likely.
Yeah, great.
Assuming they're watching.
The
clock might be tricky.
The clock would be tricky because that's so reliant on... in audio, the clock works because I can just be like, hey, you hear this.
Yeah.
Hey, you notice this. Whereas in real time, you would probably have it more set up so the clock goes like 12, 3:30, 6:58, and then go back and then stops. And then after a little while goes 12, 3:30, and does like them in a sequence or something. Or maybe if you press something or activate something, the clock would go in that sequence.
Like 4 moving clocks? And then, if there's a button or something that stops them, it stops them at the right times.
That's fun. Left to right.
Some of them
one's going clockwise, one's anti, one's clockwise, one's anti. And when you hit it, they snap to 12, 3, 6, maybe. It wouldn't be quite as nice.
The first one probably wouldn't be moving at all, right?
No. And you'd want them to, it wouldn't have the same idea of doing these in that sequence by moving one dial multiple times. I think it's like
True.
It is in audio, it's done the best it can be right now.
Yes, you're right.
But in physical, it would be a bit harder.
Yeah, there'd be some shifts. Damn, I didn't think of that.
That's the hardest one in physical.
I wonder. Any game masters out there had moving clocks as part of your puzzles that feel like it's a relevant experience to this?
Yeah.
What are your
let us know.
thoughts?
Well, look, Danny, I really enjoyed running that for you.
It was fun. I had a great time.
Thank you so much to Freya for writing it for us.
Thank you so much.
It was wonderful, and thank you for letting us run it on the show. I know it took us 4 years to do so. I apologize.
So let this be a lesson to the rest of you.
If you think we're not letting you on the show fast enough, Freya had to wait 4 years. And we didn't even have to do any, logistics. We just ran it ourselves.
Yep. It's just, we got a lot. We got a lot
going on. But thank you so much for sending it in. I hope everybody enjoyed listening to it. Bit of the rare you and me only content, unless you listen to Solve This Murder, in which case that's basically
very
all you
normal
listen
for
to.
you.
Thank you, Dani, for playing the room.
Did I talk out loud enough for you?
You did. You talked great. Except for the fact that you're an infuriating character who shouldn't have existed, and you could have just been yourself.
All it did was influence the order that I looked in things and made me not scream at any point in the room.
If you take that energy to solve this murder, you'll do even better on your next solve.
You are going to regret those words, my friend.
No, I think that would have been a great solve this murder kind of bit. It's even better to be in character for solve this murder.
Oh boy, let's see how this is going to play out for you.
You don't have to do a weird character, but you could do a character. And
It was barely a weird character.
Exactly. It'll make you more comfortable talking to people when you're not being you.
That was my hope for this.
And
It was
you talked out loud enough.
planned.
You got all your thoughts out. It was great. Thank you, buddy, for listening.
Let this be a lesson to you. If you have any kind of anxieties, just don't be yourself.
Dani keeps telling you to let things be a lesson to you. You can just let things be normal. Just listen. It's fine. Thank you for listening. Thank you so much for supporting the show. If you want to help support the show, tell a friend, tell an enemy, leave a review. Just literally, I say this every time, but please go and do it. Go and tell people about the show. Otherwise, you can help support us on Patreon. Anybody who signs up at any level can appear as an NPC in one of Dani's rooms. So not relevant for this week, but you can appear in lots of fun rooms as weird NPCs. If you were in this one of you would have been the creepy Skinner man, and one of you would have been the creepy skinned man. So glad, pretty good. Dani didn't put NPCs in this one. There's also bonus audio for anybody at any level. You can listen to the playtests of all the rooms, for bonus episodes, for 2-minute mysteries, for choose your own adventures, all this fun stuff. Anyone at any level is also part of Dani's ongoing choose your own adventure that you're writing in Patreon.
Mm-hmm.
And there's bonus monthly vlogs. We've started a great new series for our $10 donors. There'll be 2 episodes out now, I believe, of us reacting to escape rooms in pop culture, in TV. So go and check it out. It's great fun where we've now done a Bob's Burgers episode and a Big Bang Theory episode.
So if you've seen the escape rooms in those shows, maybe or if you haven't, maybe you'll have fun seeing what we think of them.
Yeah, and for $20 donors, there's a trivia club, monthly trivia club, and other fun stuff like that. So thank you, everybody who donates. The most important thing is you're supporting the show for everybody else who gets it for free. You're allowing this and Solve This Murder and other stuff that we do to exist. So thank you so much. It makes a world of difference to us and to the rest of our fans.
Yeah. We're without you doing what you do. How often do you think we'd be making podcast episodes?
We would have given up and quit because we couldn't sustain ourselves in any way.
We would have burnt out hard.
We would have burnt out hard. So thank you, everybody. You make it possible for us to make the show. Unless you don't donate, in which case you make it possible for us to make the show as well because you're the audience and you listen, and that's the whole point.
Yeah.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Dani.
Everyone.
Thank you so much to Freya for writing the room. And we'll see you all next time.